Welcome to Wine Plus AI. We're your hosts and wine lovers, Adrie and Seyna. This is the podcast where we break it all down for real people, not the people who are working in the terminal.
Just the truth about AI. What's brilliant, what's broken, and what's straight up ridiculous.
Let's get into it. All right, so welcome to another episode of Wine Plus AI. We are here today to talk about the reality of AI workflows. But before we get into that, as always, I'm going to introduce our paired wine. I'm really excited about this one because it is a Catalonian wine called, I'm going to totally butcher this, Danke els Uls. I'm not sure if I can do this. I think you're just going to have to find it in the notes of this podcast. It's a beautiful Macabeo wine from Old Vines. What to say about this wine? It has a deep golden glow from golden straw hues, which signals time, not haste. And I hope that opens up the conversation about AI workflows, that they perhaps take a little bit more time, but they're well worth the wait. Also, it is the antithesis of an AI magic button fantasy. Quality takes time. There are lots of invisible parts that you don't see, like pruning, fermenting, waiting. I think you can apply those all to AI workflows, and we'll discuss about the pruning, the fermenting, and the waiting. And the name of the wine, Danke els Uls, again, I can't say that.
You tried.
I tried. Means close your eyes, which could be actually perfect for this episode in that you should close your eyes so that you're not looking at your AI workflow thinking like, oh my God, what's happening? Or close your eyes and wait for the magic to happen.
Ooh, I love that.
So cheers, Seyna.
Cheers.
First taste it's kind of weird because it's so light. It's almost watery.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's very light and kind of tastes unexpected.
Okay, so is that maybe suggestive for this conversation? At first, it's a little watered down, and then it has this aftertaste that's maybe a bit more appealing?
Yeah, I think so. I think especially looking at AI workflows, there is a lot of possibility for surprises, both in a positive and negative sense as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I want to start talking about one of the biggest, let's just say like subtopics within AI workflows is this idea that there is no silver bullet. I think a lot of people go into the kind of exploration of their own AI workflow, whether it's for drafting emails or responding to emails automatically, or something maybe a little bit more complicated in the coding space or in the research space. They go in thinking, hey, I'm going to develop this AI workflow and it's just going to do all the work for me. And as we know, that's not always the case.
Yeah, I think what people often think is, okay, once I have set up my workflow, it's just going to happen. It's just going to happen the same way every single time. But what is AI? Like AI uses LLMs, and LLMs are not deterministic. So the output that you'll get is not necessarily going to be the same every time. So if I give ChatGPT the same question 15 times in 15 different chats, I'm going to get different answers. They will be very similar, but they won't necessarily be the same. And so workflows, that applies there as well. It will not necessarily 100% of the time be the same or give you the same output if they're purely LLM based, because LLMs just cannot do the same thing 100 times in a row perfectly.
Well, they don't want to, maybe. I was listening to the Ezra Klein show, and basically they were talking about how AI, the idea that AI wants things is very interesting. In that, like, it doesn't want the same things that necessarily we do. It's a very interesting podcast episode, but let's maybe like a tangent for now. But I do think exactly like on your topic about LLMs don't do the same thing multiple times, or they'll have some variety. I think it is kind of interesting because like that means that we do, for a lot of your work and a lot of the work that you would want to put into an AI workflow, you still need a lot of human oversight. Yeah. And that's what kind of stops the flow. At least in my case.
Yeah, I would fully agree in my case as well. If I look at all of the work that I do automate and where I do have my like full AI workflows, most of them I still have a human layer in, because either it is something external where I really want to make sure it has the human touch as well, or because of exactly what we just talked about, it doesn't necessarily have the ability to do the same thing perfectly every time.
Yeah. So I want to share an example of what I'm currently doing and how effed up this current workflow is, because it's different every single time. And let's just say it's an AI workflow in that it involves multiple AI models, but it's not a workflow in that AI covers everything for me.
Okay. Yeah, I'm very curious on hearing about this one.
So for the podcast and for different people within the Neeple team, I want to create a bunch of Neeple. So those are our AI agents. They come in 3D form, if you don't know us already. But I like to actually animate them so that we have a visual that goes along with the content that's a bit more engaging than, let's just say, just a screenshot of something or just a photo. And recently, I've been using a combination of Gemini, Midjourney, and Canva AI. So Canva has a few different AI features, but I've basically found through this process that there are some models that are better for certain things than others. So for example, Gemini is great for image generation, but it can't do motion, for example. Midjourney is, I find, really inconsistent for image generation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, inconsistent. I think you can probably get it consistent, but you have to be someone who knows this platform very well, and you know how to prompt it. You actually probably put a JSON script in the background as well. I know that is possible. I'm just not, personally, I'm not there yet.
Yeah, and also if the expectation is for you to be able to add a JSON script, then that makes it not very accessible for anyone who doesn't know what a JSON script even is.
Exactly. Thank you. And then I use Canva AI for tweaking some of the images, because I find that as good as Gemini is, I'm still, if I ask it to tweak one specific thing, very often I'm just like screaming into the void. So our 3D characters have these kind of button eyes, and Gemini just loves to put a Pixar eyes on them. And I'm just like, no, that's not what I asked for. I'm like, keep the eyes the same. No, it generates exactly the same image. I can't get it not to do that.
It's really interesting that that's your experience that you've been having. And maybe at some point we should like compare how we prompt in these tools.
Yeah, maybe.
I kind of have had the opposite experience.
Oh, really?
So where in Canva, usually when I try to change something, like when I was working on the slides recently for one of the talks I was giving, Canva was changing a whole lot of other things on my images.
I mean, to be fair, I don't really trust Canva for like the big stuff. Like I would never give Canva like a broad prompt, let's just say.
Yeah, I made that mistake.
Yeah, you can't do that. You can't do that. So the way that I'm working with them, so I will put together, basically I will give Gemini a series of our Neeple, so our 3D characters, and I'll say, hey, would you be able to, or I give it a specific Neeple. I say, hey, can you give this Neeple a cup of coffee? This is something that previously, would take hours to do. Now I can do it myself in Gemini, and boom, the Neeple actually has a great cup of coffee that is in our style, looking pretty good. And so I have basically a static image. I'm not going to ask Gemini to do any motion design on this because, that just doesn't work and it would be slightly chaotic. So I will take that image and I will put it into Midjourney. And then I'll prompt Midjourney. I'll say, hey, I would like the steam from the coffee cup, rising upwards. The character, I always refer to our Neeple as characters because I think Midjourney would just have a conniption if I said Neeple. And I say, so the character is looking relaxed, very easygoing. And sometimes Midjourney will also still put the Pixar eyes on them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But very often, at least one iteration will not have the Pixar eyes.
Yeah, okay.
But in the event that there are Pixar eyes somewhere in this process, then I put the image or the motion design into Canva, and then I edit it from there. And then I have something that I'm actually able to make a social visual for, an ad visual. But basically, it's me prompting and putting various inputs into different AI tools, because I know each AI tool has its strength, or it's like almost like its personality.
Yeah. Which makes you still the full facilitator of the whole process, right? At all points in time, you have to have eye on it. You also have to double check that it didn't change the eyes, for example, or gets the eyes changed back to where it needs to be. So it still requires a lot of human intervention in operating or working with 3 different models in that sense.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what is interesting is in some way, I think I'm giving these AI tools a personality each, in that I'm treating them almost as like separate teammates that I'm working with. Like one is the designer, one's the motion designer, and then one's the very junior intern who can tweak some stuff for me, but I would not trust to do everything.
Have you given them names yet?
No, not yet. Not yet. Luckily, they seem to come with names like Midjourney.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe I should consider doing that. But in any case, like I feel like the manager of this whole workflow rather than AI is handling everything on its own. And I know that there are workflows out there that do that. So I'm curious if you have any kind of automated workflow, let's just say, that is AI based.
Yeah. So I also would say that for most of the things I automate, I have some form of human layer in it so that I can double check it. So for example, for emails, I only do drafts, don't have my emails be sent out automatically. The one workflow that I really have fully automated is my meeting notes generation and the follow-ups of those. So the action points and putting those action points into my to-do list and therefore also then my agenda, depending on if there is a deadline on the action point, for example. And that I trust quite a lot because I also trust myself to remember if the AI didn't pick up a certain action point. But that's the one workflow that I have fully automated, where I trusted enough to do the work. And everything else that I do and where I use it, which is most of my work, there's still me involved somewhere.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I want to get to, is that we are the messy glue that holds all of these workflows together. We are the mess. Which is crazy, because I felt with all my workflows that I was like sharp, I was lean, I was, getting stuff done. But now I feel like I'm just gluing everything together. I'm managing these AI tools that are varying degrees of good at what they do.
I'm curious. So given the workflow you just described that you're doing quite frequently with Midjourney and co, do you still feel like you're saving time? That's a good question.
Okay, if I had been asked, to do the same, I think you know what it is. The work is so vastly different for me now, because I used to, just personally from my experience, I used to be more of a manager. And that's also why I'm kind of also putting that framework on these AI tools at this point. Because maybe I'm like, these are my employees now. It's just like very depressing. Yeah, exactly. But like, I think the work for me is so vastly different now, because I think in previous roles, I would have never been asked like, hey, can you create a motion design? Can you personally create a motion design asset for a social campaign or for an ads campaign? I would have been like, oh, great. Yeah, I'll ask our motion designer. So in one way, and if you had asked me, you have to do it on your own without AI, I would not have been able to do it. So I think it's actually opened up way more possibilities for me, actually, as maybe in a more creative role or in a more marketing role. But I think, I think it is interesting in that respect that it just has opened up more possibilities for me.
So it allows you to do more, but it doesn't necessarily make things faster.
But I think this also goes to, we've talked about this before, the rise of the generalist in terms of, how companies are hiring and how companies are using AI to expand the kind of skill sets of all of their employees. And they're also in turn expecting their employees to do a lot more. And that's why this conversation around AI workflows is so big, because every company wants their employees to come with like a bajillion AI workflows that they're already tapped into. So I think for me, my role is completely different, and I'm doing a lot of things that I would have never been asked to do before. And I do think that there are some workflows that involve AI. So custom GPTs that I've created, for example, for this podcast, that in previous roles, yes, I might have outsourced this to maybe somebody more junior or a content marketer in my team, but now I'm actually able to do it myself and actually able to do it in reasonably good time. Yes, it does take more time from me than it previously did because I was outsourcing this to somebody else, but I can actually do this within an hour, 2 hours, depending on what it is. And I think that's actually, if I look at when I was a junior content marketer prepping some of these things, it would have taken more than that, depending on the item. So
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think you definitely relate to that, for example, with user research and consolidating the notes for user research.
Holy crap.
It's a 10x improvement working with AI in having those calls, also getting the transcripts, comparing it to my hypotheses, using my GPT for that. Makes a massive difference.
Yeah, I think that is where, personally, in the marketing space, where I really would like to kind of make my next thing is I'd love to do a research report, because I feel like if you put in the time and money to organize various interviews with experts and people who know something about something, and you record them, you can basically pull out all of those insights in seconds, rather than you manually having to go review, assess, figure out what you kind of want to highlight. On the other hand, I think there is a cost to that automation in that, and I'm sure you have, when you do user research, you have some kind of tips around this, but I do think that you give up some of the oversight, which would honestly, it would happen if you were outsourcing this to an agency or outsourcing this to someone more junior. You would have to, hopefully you would trust them to say, hey, I trust you to bring out some insights. But the cost in this case is that you're saying like, hey, AI, can you bring out some of the insights? And I'm not sure, sometimes it depends on the day, but sometimes I feel okay with that. And some days I'm like, oh, not sure.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the topic. So if I look at how I do it now and in comparison to how I did it a few months ago, I also would oftentimes say, hey, just like consolidate the insights to me, tell me what kind of is a reappearing theme, things like that. And I really had to also optimize there from the input I give and the instructions I give to really consolidate. So now I really focus on making sure that I give the right hypotheses that I'm trying to validate with the transcripts and have my GPT compare it against that. And then my output is very, very concrete because I'm the one telling it what I'm looking for and what validation or also the opposite.
But isn't that almost like built-in confirmation bias? You're basically saying like, hey, show me instances of this, rather than going in. This is also like I'm putting on my academic research brain. And it makes me feel a little bit weird because you're saying like, hey, I want to find this. Can you bring out instances of this? But you don't know what you don't know.
This is very true. And there it really comes down to how you phrase the question that you ask. So I don't necessarily phrase it just as show me what's like if this is proven in there, but I also very explicitly state to highlight any other things that I might be missing. And my GPT is also set up in a way that I taught it to very much challenge any assumptions I make, any hypothesis I make, and based on the input provided to my GPT to give me also suggestions. And that took quite a bit of prompting to really get it to a place of, okay, I can now actually rely on that input. And I spent a lot of months still reviewing it and looking again and reading through everything myself again to see if we really captured the essence of all the pieces. And now I'm at the point where I feel comfortable enough to have my GPT do that for most of my research. Yeah.
Do you think, maybe we should have discussed this in the Does AI Make You a Better Human episode, but I feel like, number one, I haven't done that. Maybe I'm also just like more of a fan of a sycophantic AI that's like, hey, Adrie, you've done this so well. Thank you so much. Like, you're amazing. Maybe I need that. But I think for you, if you've trained your GPT to ask you critical questions, to ask follow-ups, to be a bit more critical of your input and your questions, etc., I think you must be training yourself to be more open to feedback. Even your GPT is giving you feedback.
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm not sure if I'm ready for that. I'm like a little vulnerable.
Yeah, I think it takes some training. Yeah, I definitely also was like, okay, that's not very nice. And sometimes I would like throw in ideas and just like send a voice note to it and be like, yeah, I don't think this makes sense with the direction you're going. And be like, oh, okay, I thought this was a good idea. So it is a good sounding board. I obviously don't take the feedback for granted per se, and don't take everything it tells me as my source of truth. But sometimes it does really help to open up new directions and new ideas, because it does then ask me the right challenging questions, where sometimes I can be like, no, like I know how to answer this and I'm 100% confident in this. And sometimes it does also open up the possibility for me to go back to that drawing board. Yeah.
So just to get us back on AI workflows very quickly, are there any people in your team who are running AI workflows that are automated end to end? Because I think we're determining here that for me personally, very few of my AI workflows are actually automated end to end. And for you, it seems like they're non-business critical. I mean, meeting notes are great, don't get me wrong. And I think it makes you a more organized, a better professional for sure. But if I look at like all the stuff in the AI space right now, that's like the least exciting AI workflow one could possibly propose, if you know what I mean. And I'm not sure if I've met anyone yet that has like a super badass killer AI workflow that doesn't require the messy human glue of us involved, or like copy pasting using a different AI model built for a specific purpose, if you know what I mean. So I'm curious from your perspective, because you have a team of real people, of real humans. Yeah.
If I think about all the workflows that my team does automate, there is for almost all of them still a human in the loop at some point in time. So they're not necessarily end-to-end automated. Obviously, on the customer side of my team, a lot of it is focused around action points, follow-ups, things like that. But they will still have a look at that. They won't just send that out without adding a personal touch to it, for example, to the customer, because they are obviously in charge of the relationship with the customer. On the tech side, I also would say there's always a human in the loop. So anything that's built, anything that's coded with AI, there is a human review, because that is absolutely necessary. And that's not something we would move away from. Yeah. Because AI will just sometimes make something up or add some new piece of information or feature that no one asked for.
This is insane.
My highlights. Like sometimes I make small changes myself using Claude, and then I will just submit the PR to our team, and they will be like, what the hell are you actually doing? Because it will have come up with like 3 new features in the background, but I don't look at the code, right? I just look at what Claude tells me, and I look at the feature. But I will get something added on top that I didn't ask for most of the time. I think all of the workflows in my team, there is a human in the loop in most cases. I think there's a few like tiny exceptions that are more like a general team level, like some automations in regards to like renewals, trials, things like that just are in place. Yeah, besides that, there is a human.
Yeah, and the messy human glue, I think, is just so necessary, because I think I've already mentioned this before, but I think it's important to drive home. But like with our customer stories, I was running basically fed ChatGPT a bunch of our customer stories, and I said, hey, can you find some of the best quotes within these transcripts, within the written customer story? Like, what should we highlight? I'm just getting some ideas. And it brought up some quotes, and maybe I was not specific enough in my prompt. But it brought up some quotes that straight up did not exist. And I was like, bruh, like, what are you doing? And I confronted it, and I was like, yo, this doesn't exist. How did you come to this? And he's like, oh, I thought you were looking for really insightful, punchy, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yeah, I was, but it's like the real ones. And he's like, oh, okay, I'll find the real ones. It really does feel like an intern very often that you're like, no, come on. So
eager.
Yeah, so eager. And that's why I feel like you can't really trust it in a lot of ways to do it end to end.
Yeah.
And I think that it's interesting, because I do think you mentioned before the prompt, I'm curious how you prompt Midjourney or Gemini, because you get different results. And I was like, God, I want to move away from this prompting mania that we're currently in. I want to be able to talk to AI in a normal ass way. I want to be talking to AI as if it were my colleague. And that's what we're all about at Neeple as well. That's what we're working towards. But it's just like, I think in a lot of ways, we're not always there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the goal really needs to be on enabling AI to work for you rather than priming humans on how to talk to AI.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the humans are the input. The humans are the ones that are going to be facilitating a lot of these workflows, a lot of these prompts. So it really needs to be made accessible for them.
So this is kind of a side thought, and I'm curious what your perspective is on this, because so I think for me growing up, well, even in the later, more high school, university, everybody was saying like, yeah, you should get into coding, everything is going to be coded in the future, and that's just going to be like the way things are. And, if you can code, you're going to make like crazy money, you're going to work for a big tech company. And now we're finding out, of course, that all of these coding jobs, are no longer. That it's all, vibe coding, it's all with AI. And in fact, if you invested in that as your core skill set, your job is not necessarily like the safest. I'm curious if we're going to get into this whole cycle in the future where we're like, hey, you got to be good at prompting. Like, you got to learn how to prompt. Like, prompting is the future. And I just see it, it's just a way of communicating with technology and creating something. And I'm afraid that if we just say like prompting is the skill, no, the skill is being able to create something with technology.
I think the prompting as a skill is definitely going to be more and more relevant, because it also is what I know. But it also is what kind of enables that generalist approach, right?
Yeah.
When you think about it, if you know how to work the tools and have the tools give the output that you need to be successful in your job, that enables you to succeed in your job at the end of the day. So I think the prompting piece, unfortunately, will very much be on the rise in the coming years.
No, don't say that.
Sorry.
No, I want yapping to be the skill. Yapping should be the skill.
And I think there will probably be a breaking point in that. And that's also something where we are very much optimizing for with Neeple, right? Is the conversational aspect. And because I think prompting is quite a complex skill. And because you do need to have the right context and like base level understanding of the topic to prompt correctly. It's not just a prompt is a prompt, right?
Yeah.
And that will break for many people because there's only so many people who are real experts in their field.
Yeah.
So there will be that shift, I think, to more conversational.
But what about the experts who are not? I think there are experts, let's just say like their skill is thinking. And then you have prompters who their skill is execution. So I think that's the division of labor now.
Yeah, I think so as well.
Okay, cool. Agreed. Then easy. All right. So let's bring this back to the wine. We've been having a few sips here and there. What do we think? Is this well paired with the conversation here?
I think it's definitely well paired with the conversation here, and also what you mentioned in the beginning with the closing your eyes. I think maybe closing your eyes fully while executing AI workflows, we're not quite there yet. So always good to keep an eye open and look at what is happening and what the AI is doing for you.
You know, I feel like the watery start, or kind of like the flavorless start almost, then with a bit of aftertaste complexity is kind of representative in that, of my opinion in general, is that you have all these promises of AI workflows that are completely automated. And so you feel like this is kind of watery, this kind of like, no, this does not work the way it does. But there is some kind of juice in the background, right? There is some flavor actually there sitting behind. We just need to give it some time to develop.
And discover it.
Couldn't
agree more.
All right. So highly recommend this wine. Again, I will not pronounce the name. It will be in the podcast notes. I'm going to start doing that. As always, this will be on the Joy Lab. If you've been there recently, the Joy Lab, so thejoylab.ai is where we're hosting all of this content. So the podcast, but also thoughts from our CTO, Job. I've been pleasantly surprised and like tickled by some of the posts that he makes.
Yeah,
they're really fun. We have a few technical ones in the making. So if you're somebody who's a bit more technical, there's a big block of code. And I was like, but there's one with a big block of code. If you're into that, it will be there. So subscribe, like, comment. We're excited to hear your thoughts. And thanks for joining us for another episode of Wine Plus AI.
And see you next time. That's it for this week. You know the drill.
Like, subscribe,
and see you next week.
Cheers.